Hey friends, welcome. This is Julie Tillman, and today I am going to be playing with the July box of the month. I've chosen this adorable 6x6 stamp set with the sweet mermaids and seascape images, and it has sentiments like "You're fantastic," "Thinking of you," "Hello friend," "Mermaid kisses." I'll also be using the Mermaid Dreams paper and coordinating ephemera from this month's box. I just absolutely fell in love with this aqua and purple mermaid scale print when I saw it. It's just so beautiful. I've picked out some of the Mermaid Dreams ephemera that I thought I might use, and we're going to be doing a Z-fold card that allows you to use almost all of the width of your 6x6 paper. So it's time to pull out those beautiful paper prints that you just haven't had the heart to use yet because you just want to make the most of that sheet of paper. So we're starting out with a base cardstock that is 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches. And on the long side, we're going to score at 1.5 inches and 4.25 inches. So this is just like your basic Z fold. We're going to fold this with that right side in and straighten up those edges and then burnish. And then we're going to flip it over and we're going to fold that flap back and fold it that way and then burnish. Next we'll be cutting our 6x6 piece of paper. We're using the whole width of the paper, so we're going to cut it at 5.25 on the length. If your paper is directional, decide which way is up and then rotate 90 degrees and cut at 5.25 inches. Next, we'll rotate back to the 6-inch side and cut it into sections. The first cut is going to be at 2 3/4 inches. And then we'll cut at 1 1/8 inch. And the remaining section should be 2 1/8 inches. We're also going to need a piece of white cardstock for a little section to write our message in. So we'll cut this to 5.25 inches by 1 1/8 inches. And that's most of the cutting for this card. I do have one other panel that we'll bring in later. So I've brought out my cardstock and my pattern paper pieces, and I am just going to glue that 5.25 by 1 1/8 inch pattern paper strip on the center front flap of the card. That's the flap that we folded backwards. There's a thin border around the edge, so I'm using a T-square to make sure things line up across the panels. I'm also making sure I have my paper the direction I want it with the scales facing down. Next, we're going to open up the card. Our next panel is the 2 1/8 inch panel, and we're going to add adhesive to the back of that, and then we're going to lay it down centered in between the two score lines on our card base. And I'm just using that T-square again to line them up so those bottom edges meet up and it looks continuous. Next, I'm just going to burnish that down really well so the adhesive has a chance to grab onto that paper. Next up, we'll be taking that 2 3/4 inch piece and we are going to be aligning that on the right edge with the little border in between the two panels. So we're just gonna add about a 1/8 inch border around, and I'm using my T-square to help me get that the right way. And we will just glue that down. And just like before, we're gonna line that up and then just burnish really well. And so the last panel on the inside is that 1 1/8 inch by 5.25 inch strip of white cardstock that we cut, and we are going to place that in that little place just to the right of the panel we just glued down. And we'll add adhesive and line it up and then just burnish it down. And now off screen, I cut a 1 1/8 by 5.25 inch strip of that bubbles pattern paper. You could skip this step, but I just wanted to use those bubbles too. We'll add that over on the left side and just give it some glue and give it that same little border so everything lines up. And then we're going to put adhesive on that flap and secure it down so that you don't see that part anymore. And then we're just going to give it a good burnish. So I've selected my ephemera from the Mermaid Dreams ephemera pack, and I chose the girl holding the sea turtle, a starfish, and that seaweed. And I'm going to have the girl popped up on dimensionals, so the seaweed and stars are going to be on the bottom, and then she'll be popped up above them. So I'm just going to glue that on really quick. And I want part of the girl to hang over the flap, so I don't want dimensionals to show on that side. So I just placed a ruler there to kind of at the halfway point of her head to make sure that I kind of stayed in the right area. And then once I remove the backings from those pop dots, I am going to just add some liquid glue to just the half that I want to adhere to that flap. And then we'll flip her over and place her down. Once she's down, we'll flip open the card and work on the inside. You want to keep in mind that anything that you put on that right side inside is going to show. So we want to keep any of our images placed below that ephemera so that it won't show when we're looking from the front. For my stamped image, I chose that sweet little mermaid that's laying down, and I colored her with alcohol markers, and then I fussy cut her out. And then I want to add this little sea plant here, and I want it to look like she's part of the scene. So I'm just going to stamp that in the middle with black memento ink, and then I'm going to color with Ohuhu markers. And then I'll just glue her down so that she's part of that little scene. And then off camera, I stamped the Thinking of You sentiment, and I die cut it with the fishtail banner from the Easy Wonder Die #1 add-on. And I'm just placing that over on the left side. So now we can take a peek at our card. We're going to shut it, and then we'll see from the beginning, we see the girl, then our little mermaid is hiding behind, and then we have our sentiment up top. I am going to add some sparkly enamel dots to the front. I just love a bit of sparkle, and I'll be putting 3 up in the left corner and then 2 in the bottom corner. And then I'm going to pull out one of my green markers and just add a little accent to the darker parts of the greens on the sea turtle and the seaweed. I just like to have my colors match, and if you add a little bit of the color you used for your coloring and that matches your paper, it will blend well, and it will look like the greens go together even if they are just a shade or 2 off. So there's our finished card. I just love this darling mermaid theme. We used our 6x6 paper, and you got to use pretty much the whole sheet, just that little 1/2-inch strip that was left from that beautiful paper. I absolutely love how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this card. This layout is a great way to use up some of those beautiful papers. Thanks so much for stopping by. Links to what I used today and measurements will be in the description box. I'd love it if you'd give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. I just love hearing from you. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you on the next one.